Yeah, I thought this was pretty cool that there's they compared a few gaming-focused Linux OSs to Windows 11 and actually beat them in benchmarks. It's
Oh,
just
nice.
just really quick. They
On
said,
the new AMD processors.
uh, do they give the specs here? I don't know if they do or not. But the three are Pop OS, Arch Linux, and Nobara OS. Do you guys know Nobara OS?
Yeah.
It's
All
supposed to be game-oriented Linux.
Yeah, it's Fedora,
Is it?
and
Okay.
the person who maintains it is someone like a major contributor or developer or something.
So they say that.
Ryzen
Oh,
7
okay. Here it goes, Joe.
580X and a
Yeah.
Radeon RX 67 XT.
Mm-hmm.
They
All
tested
AMD
it
test rig.
with Cyberpunk, Forspoken, Ratchet and Clank, Starfield, and the Talos Principle 2.
And you're saying they ran these through Proton?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Proton, it's almost like having an emulator technology that's faster than the original hardware. You know, we're sort of hitting that with some, at least with some things on Proton, where it's like somehow this code compiled for a completely different system has this emulation layer that is able to run it more efficiently than the original hardware could, which I think is kind of hilarious.
It says
And
Nobara was the highest performing OS that they tested.
let me ask you guys a
Overall.
question, and not to belabor this. Netminer, if you want to bounce, I don't mean to keep dragging you along, man. I mean, we can stop. I'll stop. I'll stop.
No,
bringing
that's
up
fine.
weird things.
What's your question?
I just wanted to bring up those two just because he said
Well,
he was
I have
ready
something to add
question.
on to that, but I don't want to keep. That's what I'm like. If Netminer wants to stop, or if he wants to jump.
I can hang in a little bit. I just wondered if this is going to be our one o'clock.
Oh, I don't think so.
No. The only thing I was going to say is I still hear this whole idea of Linux native for games, especially, and
Mm-hmm.
if things, even if they're not intended for Linux, if you can use Proton and have this compatibility layer that's available on most systems, does it even matter that it's Linux native?
Well, no. And, I can see the argument that people made about, if the compatibility layer isn't there, then they're forced to actually program for it natively. But I agree with you, the whole Proton layer and having it work on Linux anyway is better in the long run because 90% of your developers or more are, developing for Windows. So if we want to be able to game on Linux, then this is the best way to do it.
I mean,
Even
it just
if
seems like
it disincentivizes, programming natively in Linux.
well, that's what I've heard is like someone, because I've said, well, if that's the case and a developer can create a Windows game and then all they had to do was verify it on Proton and maybe there was a couple small, tweaks they'd have to make. We're not talking about them writing an entirely separate client, right? We're talking about just maybe tweaking the Windows-based game that works better with Proton, or at least be collaborating with the Proton developers. And that's exactly the argument I heard was, well, then now you dissuade them from ever even attempting a Linux native port. And I keep thinking like, but why? Like, why bother with that? Why are you asking a developer to outlay?
The market share is so small for Linux
Yeah.
as it is that it already disincentivizes them. So why take the tool away from us?
It's kind of that zealotry side of things, I guess, where it's just like if it's not native, then it's not good, or I don't know.
What you're actually finding out is that Proton, to steal from OS2, is a better Windows than Windows. The reason you're getting higher performance under Proton is that Proton doesn't have to go through a lot of the legacy cruft that's built into Windows.
That
Right,
is true.
McAfee's not running in the background, messing everything up.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a fair point, Net Miner. The fact that yes, the executable runs in that environment, but then the system supporting that environment has so much overhead comparatively. And Joe's joking about McAfee, but really
I'm not.
I mean, because I don't know how many times I've had to add exceptions to like Defender and other stuff because it kept screwing with, and it wasn't just games, it would be random software. Like, why do you think this is a virus? And why are you running in the background? It's there's just such an inefficient approach to that stuff. So that makes sense. The Proton would be maybe would benefit because of that.